Okay, I just undid some of the spoon thing by popping this curve back up instead of under. And I did that by taking this sketch here on the layout, which was under the line from here to here, and I've put it back on top. What does that give me on that top surface? Okay, I like this actually. See now, this surface here no longer has a dark side on here. Instead, it has a tiny little bit of highlight. It's still uneven. Now I have an uneven highlight on the edge instead of a dark spot. But as a result, this guy here now has the dark highlight. And then when I rotate this thing around, I see that, yeah, this point here between these three surfaces is all sunk inside. That's not really good. I mean, it produces a certain effect that you might want sometimes, but when you blend this, it's going to have a little bit of curve in this direction. So you have to watch out for that. So I'm okay with this little highlight for now. I'm happy with popping the surface upward. Right, this piece here is now going up above instead of down under. Now I'm going to work on these curves here. I'll show you in detail. These here. This nose is puffing out really far, and that was really fun to play with. But the fact of the matter is that puffing the nose by using this curve here and the curve on the opposite side doesn't actually give us any rounding when we look at it from the top. When we look at it from the top, all the rounding we get, which is what we're after for rounding our tip, for making our tip pointy, still comes from this curve and this curve. See, the outer shape right here looks like this one and this one. All that we got by pulling these curves out here was one, it was fun to play in 3D and make this thing pop out, but it pushed this curve further out. It did not round it anymore. So I'm going to reduce the height on these two. And what I mean is that this curve right here is defined by a XY sketch on the layout plane, and then there's a Z elevation sketch. And the Z elevation is what's doing all the forward pushing here. So I'm going to reduce that on both sides. Oh, and it's these two sketches, by the way. Those curves we're just looking at come out of the layout plane, defined by this sketch, but they are pulled this much. So you can see they're being pulled forward a lot. Okay. All right, I just reduced the elevation caused by the curve composition by half. These used to be at 10. These used to be 10 millimeters away from the layout sketch, and now they're at 5. Let's see what that did. Okay, right here, see, this really reduced the amount of curving in this direction, but in a practical sense, it did not reduce the amount of curvature from here to here. That front curve, this surface used to be out here with more or less the same curvature as seen in the top view, and now it's the same curvature, but it's just moved back. And so it's also undistorting these two side faces, which we're doing something really complicated in going from the flat rail profile to a really surging rail profile. What I did lose here is roundness in this area, but I still, even though I lost some, it's still plenty rounded. Okay, so what I see now, the bottom edge here is very uneven with the top edge. And that is because these two sketches here create a very uneven curvature. When I originally did those, I was in this view, kind of like this, and I said, oh, I'm going to maintain a gap between this line and this line. But really, these two sketches, like these three curves and these three curves, actually start on the same plane. I don't have to have an offset here. This line here could actually be exactly in line with this one. So let's start by doing that. So I'm going to bring this guy back, and then I'm going to try pinching these 2 points closer to the center. So I'm going to keep this line here will be the same distance away, but I'm going to pinch these 2 points closer to each other. This is going to be really tricky because the height is set in the elevation sketches, but the closeness of the points together here still lives in the XY sketch that is on the layout. So I might get an unexpected effect. When I pinch these 2 points closer to each other, I have to watch out for how the surface behaves, not only on here, but also on this side. So let's give it a shot. Reduce this guy dramatically to be more or less aligned with this guy right here, maybe just a little bit forward, and then get all these points here to pinch towards the center to make more curvature on the tip. And then finally, once we're done playing with that, then we'll increase the size of the blending. All right, let's do it. Okay, in this sketch and this sketch, I've tucked these points towards the center, and the Z sketches automatically follow. Let's see what just that did. Before I tuck this guy back in, let's see what this did. I can't see too much difference here at this level. When I look here, I can't really see too much, but what this is doing is it's, instead of having a distributed curvature along this curve, it's rounding more in the center than at the edges. So it's not very visible at this level. When I look right here, okay, maybe I can see a little something here. You remember how there was really dark areas on this? Now I don't have dark areas. This has become all bright. But when I look on this guy here, I think I'm seeing less edge effect in this piece right here. See, this was the one that was, first it was dark when it was folded in a spoon inside the nose, then it was really bright. This area looks a little bit more even, and there's a tiny little bit of bright spot left here. Let's see what this has done to the blended object. I can't really see too much effect, to be honest, right here. It hasn't done anything bad. Maybe let's look at the version without the lines, or at least let's look at the version all the same color. I don't see any obvious issues. Let's look at the version without the lines. Is it high resolution? Yeah, it's high resolution. Okay. So when I look at this right here, I don't see anything bad. I'm going to look at it in top view. And maybe it's a little bit flatter than it used to be. I'll adjust that later by reducing the size of the middle. I'll increase the overall blend to cut away more of this area, and that should get more pointy. But for now, there's no problem as such. So I'm going to go back to my sketches. And play with the Z elevation sketches on both of these. Okay, I slightly reduced this one, but in the end I didn't move this one very much. I didn't think I had any more room to pull it forward. So this guy here used to be way out and increasing in this area, and now they're more or less parallel. What do the nose primary surfaces look like? It's not too bad. I mean, there's still a change from right here to right here, but it's in a large area. It doesn't look too much like a local defect. My corners are still inset a little bit. I really don't like that. Maybe I'm going to reduce the curvature on this guy even more. I'm curious. I said I wanted to have the blend on the upper rail be smaller than the one on the bottom rail, right? I want a sharp bottom rail and a soft top rail. So maybe I should consider that before I change these points here, because to do that, I need to pull this guy down. So that's going to expose more of this surface. And so far, I've only looked at the top side. Now I want to take a look at the underside here. At the curve level, it doesn't look too bad. This is a clear, well-defined corner, so that looks fine. And it looks fine here as well. See, this is what I wish I had on top, 3 well-defined corners, but I also want the rounding. So, let's see. Let's look at those primary curves some more. How do those look? Okay, so now everything here is a lot more nice and even. Oh, there's one final thing. Is that this curve here is biased towards the top. That's because it's at an angle. So even though this sketch on the layout is kind of symmetric back and forth, it ends up creating a curve that is tilted up. I should shift that. What that means is here, this curve, which sits on the layout, is even when I consider start point to end point, but because the whole thing is tilted, it's pushing these points towards the top. Maybe I should manually shift them towards the bottom. So let me do that here and here. This is what I'm talking about. I want to shift these 2 points a little bit more down towards here. Okay, here's the new setup. A dimension on this guy and a vertical dimension to this point. It's not much difference, but it's by dragging this point down quite a bit, I'm going to increase the angle on this line, and that's going to modify where these 3 curves meet up here. So I'm going to do that on the other side, and then we'll look at the. Okay, I did it on both sides, and you can see what that did. It started dragging this down towards here. And I think that's pretty good. It didn't need to be tilted out this way. And I still see a lot of unevenness between this guy and this guy. This here is up quite a ways. Maybe I can bring this back down. But I don't know if that's good or bad for my primary surfaces. So let's take a look at what this change right now just did in terms of these corners. Okay, I think I'm starting to see my corner here emerge out, and instead of being inside, it's starting to appear outside again. And let's take a look without the black lines. Almost. It's kind of flattening in here, but it's not. It's no longer clearly inside the surface. And this I can see clearly is definitely going outward too much. So that's the next change I'm going to do. I had it all the way inside, then I put it all the way outside. I'm going to make this still be outside, but a tiny value, a tiny, tiny value. Okay, and here we are. It's this guy, and instead of being 2 millimeters up, it's now 0.5 millimeters up. Let's see what that does. Let's go straight up to this guy. Okay. I think that's pretty good. I was seeing a strong rounding in this area, and now the shape that I want on the nose is starting to come back out. And do I have a clear outside corner emerging? I think so. I look at these 3 faces right here as I loop around. This is starting to look like a clear outside corner instead of a belly button type of deal. Let me look at it from the top and see what the highlights are doing. This is more reasonable. This is pretty uniform. It's supposed to be a single surface. It's pretty uniform. I see some highlights on here, but they're not completely localized in the corner, right? This is pretty good. And I see a really bright spot right here, but it's evenly spread out on the whole nose. So now I'm going to look at my curves. Okay, I feel a lot closer to saying, yeah, I actually like these primary surfaces and these primary curves. Although even when I look at them in this very rough state, you know what? It's worth it. I think I'm going to increase the resolution on this guy as well. Maybe not quite as much. Let's try 1 degree and 0.4. Will that even update? Sometimes I change the number and it doesn't update. Okay, this time it did, and 0.4 looks great, to be honest. So I'm going to do this 0.4 business on all of these guys. And I'm not going to go all the way down to 0.3 unless I really have to. 1.4. Did it actually set them all correctly? Oh, see, this guy didn't take. Sometimes when one of the objects already has the value you want, then it doesn't apply to all the other ones. See, this is still 0.3. Make it 0.4. I'm trying to cut out all these delays due to the updates and the resolution changings because it really bogs down the video. Okay. When I look at this, can I say, yeah, I actually like these surfaces. These surfaces and these curves really express what I want. I think so. This is what I want. This design expresses that, look, the front is not a completely rounded tip that vanishes to a point. There's a definite front surface to this thing, but I'm going to do a lot of blending so that it puts you right on the cusp of asking yourself, oh, is this a fully pointed tip or is this a rounding? That's what I want. And I look over here. It looks okay. I look over here. I think it looks okay. Do I still have the thing where it's doing all the pinching at the very tip and then it becomes wide really fast? It is still doing that. And I think this actually deserves revisiting the main curves that run from section to section. This curve thickens out really fast, and maybe I should do some thinning directly on this primary curve. I really think so. I think I should take this guy and make it so that it thins out right here. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so I'm looking at my Z follower sketches, all of them, but specifically I'm paying attention to these two curves here and this guy up here. I can't mess too much with this side because that's controlling the thickness in this area. But I could grab this edge here and lower this point. And that would thin out this upper section here. So the bottom wouldn't change too much, but the top would pinch down more. I'm going to do that. Okay, so I just went into this profile for the elevation from center to nose, and I lowered this quite a bit. It was at minus 45 and I just pulled it down to minus 60. So now I still have these two lines almost parallel and these two lines a lot closer to being parallel. Let me show you what it looked like at minus 45. This was really thick and then this was getting pointy all at once. So I'm going to make it more gradual. Minus 60. I'm going to stop the recording to do the other side and let the whole thing recompute. Actually, before I do the second side, I'm going to show you what it did just on one side. And so you can see this is where it used to be. And then it popped down to here. So it thins out much more gradually, but I didn't lose too much in the body of the board, right? I would say the body of the board is about up to here. So I lose a tiny bit, but I didn't affect the way the transition works at the center. So that's the whole thing right here. And yeah, I'm going to do the other one. All right, now I did on both sides. It's this sketch and this sketch. So I'm going to turn off this control sketch business and go back to looking at my view sets. And remember, this is all in the context of the nose. So, okay, I'm quite happy with this progression and this thinning out. Remember, my bottom rocker is completely unaffected. I haven't touched those curves. The top rocker still looks decent. I'm not seeing anything bad happening along this curve. It's still nice and gradual. I have some extra thickness in the middle of the board because that curve rocks. It has curvature, a dome from left to right. It gently disappears into here because now at the tip I only have a tiny little bit of dome. And I think this thing is a lot more reasonable back and forth. Although this guy is still longer in the front. I wonder if that's doing me any good at all. But let's just look again at our primary surfaces. This is looking fine to me. I wouldn't say I'm perfectly happy with these primary surfaces, but perfect is the enemy of good. And I would say they are good right here. Let's look at the one without the black lines to see what's happening with the corners. Okay, I would say I have nice defined outside sharp corners here. Once again, no belly button action. That makes me happy. Because the belly buttons, they can be blended away, but they could leave a ripple behind. So if you have a clean outside corner, you know it's not going to leave a ghost ripple. This is still fairly flat, but it's more like an outside corner. And I look at my blend. The blend looks fine. Did I soften the transition where it was really, really thin at the nose and then it was getting wide too quickly? I would say so. Look at this is the thin nose. And it is still getting wide, but I think that's a lot more gradual already. And so when I look at how the blend is behaving, like this lower edge of the blend or the upper end of this blend here, I think this is more like it.